What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. The new season is here, and with it comes one of the biggest moveset updates that we've had in recent history. So many different Pokemon have been buffed, Shadow Galarian Weezing being one of them that I really wanted to try out today, as well as Shadow Sableye and Lapras. I think this is a very solid team, and a team of 3 Pokemon I really wanted to try out. So let's get into the battles and see just how powerful these 3 Pokemon can be. Alright, game number 1. The reason that Weezing is now good is because Sludge got that damage increase, and it's going to be a perfect showcase of it right here with a Sludge into a Clefable. Let's see if our opponent has Meteor Mash. No, they're going to go instantly for the Swift, and that's going to be an instant no-shield from us. Swift is a very inefficient move for a Clefable to throw here. Luckily, that likely means they have Moonblast, and I'm going to make sure that I don't throw a Sludge into this Clodsire, which they did try to catch. With that said, our Lapras can come in, go for the Sideways and Sparkling Arias, 2 new moves for this season. Sideways being a super effective Psychic-type fast move against this Clodsire. Sparkling Aria basically just being a better version of Surf, doing even more damage than it would otherwise, and it is going to be able to be reached by our Lapras before the next Stone Edge is going to be thrown. In fact, we have back-to-back here. We draw the shield with that first move, though the second one is going to be thrown. Let's see just how much damage we can do to one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the game. It almost is enough to knock out, not quite enough, but it's going to set up a nice Shadow Claw farm down range for our Shadow Sableye. Now, Sableye, the reason Sableye is a lot better in this new meta is because Foul Play got a bit of a rework. It does do a little bit less damage now, but it is a much cheaper charge move. Our opponent does have that Clefable, so I don't want to stay in that matchup. I'm going to go for a bit of a combo play, go for this Sludge against this Clefable, and see what they want to do. They let it go. It basically one-shots them there, and now in the backline, unfortunately for them, is another Pokemon weak to Sludge. This Jump Up does not want to take these Poison-type charge moves, and because Weezing is so offensive, I'm very excited to see just how much damage it's going to do. They do shield up that first move, which is going to mean we have to throw another one if we want to see how much damage we can do with our Weezing, but Aerial Ace is not going to knock us out. Thanks to our shield, we have another shield ready to go, so Weezing should be able to close out this game. Sableye with all of the energy in the backline, not even going to be needed. That almost does a one-shot against a Shadow Jump Up as well. That is crazy. Sludge is going to be reached once again. Such quick pacing. It is 5-4, 5-4 to these Sludges. Straight force to Brutal Swing, so Weezing is such a spammy Pokemon. It is a nightmare if you're not prepared for it. All right, next game, a Meowscarada in the lead. Very spicy stuff here in Rank 1 battles. You have no idea what you're ever going to see, and since this Pokemon is obviously a Dark and Grass type into our Fairy and Poison, we are in a commanding position. Sludge is going to be thrown. Our opponent likely does have to shield this if they don't want to get one-shot, but look at how much damage we're doing with our Fairy Winds at this point. They are overfarming so much energy. What are they doing right now? I don't even know. I can just shield farm them all the way down. I am not going to have to worry about this energy because they are going to get knocked out by that next Fairy Wind. Night Slash is going to be shielded. I was kind of worried about a Frenzy Plant, but I guess at this point it doesn't really matter. They are gone. All that energy down the drain, and in comes a Swampert. Swampert also did get access to Sludge in this season, so that could be kind of interesting if they have it. Our team isn't necessarily weak to Sludge, though, and because we have so much energy on this Weezing, this Swampert is going to be neutralized very quickly. Another Brutal Swing will be thrown. We are very close to another one. Well, I mean, we're always close to a Brutal Swing. We're 4 away, which means that we can go for it if they do try to get greedy and farm us down. Brutal Swing, once again, will be reached. Swampert is trying its best to farm us down, but Mudshot, not enough damage to take out our Poison-type Pokemon, and Weezing is just a bit too spammy. We knock them out here, and we see their final Pokemon is a Talonflame. Lapras, despite not resisting any of the fast or charge moves here, is still very spammy. Sparkling Aria is going to be thrown, and likely is going to be able to either knock out or put them very low on this Talonflame. Not quite enough to one-shot them there, but the next Sideways are, and we are able to win that game. Alright, next game here, the Malamar into our Shadow Galarian. Weezing this Pokemon is a little bit of a neutral matchup here. Obviously, Fairy is super effective against Dark, but Psychic is super effective against Poison. So our fast moves are doing a lot of damage back and forth. Although I do resist their charge moves, I can no-shield this Foul Play and go for a Sludge of my own. Sludge will likely draw a shield from them if they don't want to get knocked out or put into Fairy Wind downrange. They do shield it up, and in comes our Shadow Sableye to try to whittle down this Pokemon before our Weezing gets completely Sideways down. Since they stayed in that lead matchup for so long, I kind of have to imagine that we have a lot of play in the back with our Shadow Weezing. Our opponent, though, comes in with a Clodsire after superpowering our Sableye. Interesting play there. Not really a bait anymore, saying that Foul Play and Superpower are the same energy, so an interesting call by them nonetheless. We're going to go for a Foul Play against this Clodsire, and I think at this point that was just a Sludge Bomb. We can no-shield it, survive this very easily, and go for another Foul Play here in just a second. Once this Clodsire is out of the way, I'm hoping that our Weezing is going to be freed up in the back line, and we should be in a very good spot. Foul Play number 2 going to be thrown. Not going to be quite enough to knock out, saying we did get that damage decrease, and I tried to Sidewave down, but unfortunately I do reach a charge move. Hopefully going to be a Sludge Bomb, not a Stone Edge. Let's see what they have. Luckily, just a Sludge Bomb is going to be thrown. We can Sidewave down and see what they're going to bring in now. Our opponent brings back in that Malamar here, a Pokemon which is obviously going to be able to go for superpowers against us, but thanks to our energy lead, we can outpace, go for Sparkling Aria, and try our best to chip down this Pokemon. They do shield up the charge attack, which makes sense at this point. They want to invest in their Malamar, and because I can shield this up and outpace them to another move, I'm just going to do that, right? I want to keep this Pokemon alive if I can, and we can see why they're so worried about our Weezing. There is a Fairy-type Pokemon in the backline. This Azumarill is by no means going to want to face off against a fully loaded Lapras either. Skull Bash is going to raise our defense stat, do a massive amount of damage to them there, and make it so a player up will not be able to knock us out. At this point, I have a charge move on our Sableye. They have thrown all of their energy here, so I can swap into our Weezing, and I'm going to take as many bubbles as I can to guarantee that my HP is as low as possible to make sure Malamar doesn't get a ton of energy. All I need to do to win this game is make sure that I don't lose CMP to a Malamar with their Sableye, and we can win this game. Since they don't get any energy here, they don't have a charge move, we can go for a foul play instantly. I know a very attack-weighted Malamar might be able to win the CMP. It wouldn't be very consistent there, but I want to guarantee the win nonetheless, so by making sure they don't get a big farm down, we were able to secure that one. GG's to them. All right, next matchup, a Cresselia up against our Shadow Weezing. Very interesting matchup here. We know Cresselia is potentially rocking the Future Sight charge move. If they are, then I have to respect it. Since they're staying in, I mean, that makes me think they might actually have it. If they had Future Sight, or rather Moonblast and Grass Knot, then the charge moves would be resisted. But either way, these fast moves are adding up over time. I'm going to respect it. This could be a one-shot against us here. Let's see what it's going to be. A Future Sight does get shielded, so a good call by me. And since we are able to outpace them so heavily to these Brutal Swings, I can go for 2 more back-to-back charge moves before their next Future Sight. I know I don't two-shot them with this charge move, but these fairy winds are adding up over time, so if they stay in, we're in a good spot. They actually end up catching that next Brutal Swing on likely a Galarian Moltres. If that is the case, then a good thing to see it here. Our backline would be very scared of this Pokemon. We can go for Fairy Wind, super effective fast move pressure. We're at back-to-back Sludge right now as well, so if they end up shielding this move, I can throw again. If they no-shield, honestly, it might just be enough to knock them out. They actually no-shield. We knock them out with a Sludge. That is a ton of energy down the drain. Our Weezing has basically knocked out 2 Pokemon this game. Cresselia is so low in the backline. They just brought in a fairy, or a dark and fighting type Pokemon into our fairy type, which is not what you want to do most of the time. You're going to see just how much damage you do with fairy winds here. Sludge does get shielded. We go for a bait now with a Brutal Swing. They're going to be forced to shield this up if they don't want to see a Weezing sweep come through. Brutal Swing does get the shield, and our opponent at this point is going to be forced to throw a Night Slash if they want to knock us out. We CMP on the Sludge. Weezing has knocked out 2 Pokemon already this game. Well, it will have after landing this move, and basically knocked out the Cresselia. This is basically a full-fledged Weezing sweep. Sludge will be enough to knock out the rest of this Pangoro, and at this point, all they have is about 2 Shadow Claws of HP left over on this Cresselia. Even if they had Moonblast, they would not one-shot our Sableye, and we have a full health Lapras in the back. All right, next game, another great matchup for our Shadow Galarian Weezing. We have to keep in mind they might have Hurricane. This is the new season. There could always be some crazy movesets, so keep that in mind later on. But they say swap a Galarian, or just a regular Slowbro, I guess, or Slowking. It's a confusion using Water-type Pokemon. That's all I know, and at this point, it's not going to do too much work against our Shadow Sableye. Shadow Claw is going to add up over time. In fact, it is just going to no-shield to Foul Play, which means down goes all of the energy on that Slowking. In comes their final Pokemon. It's a Talonflame of all things, a Pokemon which by no means wants to take a Power Gem. Even just Foul Plays, though, after these Shadow Claws will be enough to knock them out. Foul Play will likely draw a shield, and if it doesn't, we can just fast move them down. If it does, then we can reach another one here in just a second. This Foul Play is likely going to draw the second shield from this Pokemon, meaning that our Shadow Weezing and our Lapras in the backline should be sitting in a very good spot. At this point, they are going to be forced to throw a charge move before another Foul Play will be reached. I'm going to let my Sableye go down and come in with our Lapras here to try to absorb as much damage as we can. Actually, no, why not just come in with our Weezing, go for a Sludge Bomb, and make sure that they don't get any extra energy off. And because of how much energy I have here and the 2 shields, I think at this point Lapras is not even going to be needed to use in this battle. We can go for a Sludge against this Grass-type Pokemon and one-shot them. This is fantastic stuff. Once again, Weezing closing out the endgame. All right, next matchup, we're going to see a Shadow Weezing up against a Talonflame, a bit of an awkward Pokemon. We were able to easily deal with it last game thanks to how much of an advantage we had, but because this time it's in the lead, we don't actually have a hard answer to this. Every single one of our Pokemon takes neutral from every single move from this Talonflame, so a lot of Incinerate damage, a lot of Fly and Vapor damage across the board could be very scary. But I do chip it down with that Sludge. It puts them deep into the red after these Shadow Claws, so honestly, just a bit of chip and dip should be able to help us out whittle down this Pokemon. Vapor does get shielded, likely going to see a swap out from our opponent, and for some reason, they bring in a Decidueye of all things. This is by no means a Sableye answer. Foul Play is super effective, same with these Shadow Claws, and because we were able to do as much damage as we are here, we might even be able to farm down potentially the longer this is going to go on. They actually do just go for a 4 Astonish energy charge move, so likely going to be Spirit Shackle here. But you survive that, go for a Foul Play once again. Foul Play is so spammy nowadays. This is fantastic. That pacing increase helping out Sableye so much. Foul Play does draw that second shield, and now Weezing has as much energy as it needs to go for a Brutal Swing against this and knock it out. We are also 2 Fairy Winds away from another Brutal Swing, so we can knock out that Talonflame if they come back in and make sure their energy is down the drain once again. Our opponent, what are they going to bring in? Likely going to be the Talon, but it could be their final Pokemon if it is a hard answer to our Weezing. They bring back in Talon, so I'm very interested to see what that final Pokemon is going to be. In comes a Brutal Swing. Our opponent has no choice but to let it go, and their final Pokemon is revealed as a Dragon type. Unfortunately for them, I have Sludge, which is a very efficient charge move. It's not super effective, but it will do a massive amount of damage, and it puts them into range where we can just Psywave them all the way down and win the matchup. I want to no-shield the Thunder Punch. I just want to see how much damage it's going to do. I know that Lapras is pretty bulky. I just want to test out ranges nowadays. nowadays. Power Whip, okay, I'm trying to throw the game as much as I can right now. I didn't realize I had enough energy for that, but I came in close, and I still won that game there. And we learned just a little bit about what Lapras can shield and no shield. All right, next matchup, a Shadow Dusknoir in the lead. A very neutral matchup here. You might expect it to be a good one, saying we spam out these Brutal Swings so quickly, but Shadow Dusknoir with these Astonishes are doing so much faster pressure to us. The longer this goes on, the worse it gets for me. Shadow Punch as well would basically knock us out from this range. I am a big fan of Shadow Dusknoir in this current meta. I feel like it's a very cool pick. It has access to Dynamic Punch as well as a coverage move, so it could be a little bit tricky. Our opponent safe swapping a Shadow Drapion, which is obviously a pick that our whole team is a little bit soft to here, so I'm going to try our best to whittle it down with Lapras. No Shield the Crunch, luckily no defense drop here, and go for a Sparkling Aria when we can. I know this won't one-shot them, but if it ends up landing, it will put them into a fast food farm down range and make it so this Pokemon is nowhere near as tricky for our backline as it could otherwise be. And since they did no shield that, and with how much damage these Sideways are doing, despite being resisted, I think I can shield this up and go for a full farm down. Crunch does unfortunately get a defense drop on us here, and they end up getting an Aqua Tail at the last second, but we can still get this farm down and use this energy against whatever is going to come in. At this point, our Lapras almost has a Skull Bash loaded. Our opponent is going to take the energy on their own Shadow Lapras. That was a Water Gun Shadow Lapras of all things. Very interesting stuff here. I think at this point, all we need to do is use energy on our Weezing and on our Sableye to win this game. In comes a Brutal Swing. Our opponent does have to shield this up if they want to not get knocked out. It could be a Sludge. Our opponent, though, actually just lets that go, and I am seeing a little bit of a mistake by me at this point. I have been a little bit overzealous. I thought Shadow Sableye in the backline should be able to just deal with this Shadow Dusknoir, but the thing is, it's almost at 2 Shadow Punches at this point. I don't know if I can survive that Shadow into Shadow. This is a very squishy matchup here, so I don't know if our Shadow Sableye can Shadow Claw down before that second Shadow Punch is going to land, and I think it will easily two-shot us here. In comes the next Shadow Punch, and unfortunately for us, our first loss of the season is to a Water Gun Lapras due to a bit of a misplay by me here in the mid-game. Not what you want to see, but honestly, it's the beginning of the season. It's going to happen, so GG's to our opponent. Very interesting game. All right, next game, a Shadow Dragonair in the lead, a Pokemon which obviously our Fairy typing loves to see, and in comes a Talonflame on the safe swap. We've talked about how this is an awkward matchup for our whole team. We don't have any resistances to any of their fast or charge moves. I'm going to shield up, and luckily we do shield a Brave Bird, which is exactly what we needed to have happen there to give us just a little bit more wiggle room in this matchup. In comes a charge move once again from our Lapras here. This Sparkling Aria will easily knock out. Even without that defense drop from Brave Bird, it would be enough, but they just let it go, and they come in with their final Pokemon, and it is a Blastoise. This is a very interesting matchup. I know Blastoise with Rollout is a consistent answer to Lapras, but because Skull Bash is already reached, we can do quite a bit of damage or draw a shield from them before they're able to knock us out. Thanks to that defense boost, they might even have to go for a Skull Bash of their own if they want to take us out, which is likely what we're going to see come through here. Skull Bash does raise their defense stat. Our Sableye is going to try its best to close out this endgame. I know that these Shadow Claws are going to add up over time despite that defense boost, and we are a very spammy Pokemon. We can survive one Hydro Cannon pretty easily. In comes that Dragonair, and that's going to give us such an opening at this point to go for an Overfarm, go for Sludge Bombs against this Pokemon. I keep saying Sludge Bomb. No, it's just Sludge. Sludge is a completely separate move from Sludge Bomb, and honestly a much better move in my opinion right now. It's such a high damaging, low energy charge move. You can see just how much damage it just did to that Dragonair. In comes that Blastoise once again. We can go for Sludges and Fairy Winds against this Pokemon, and despite the fact that they're pretty bulky, we've seen how much damage Sludge is able to do, and we are a Shadow Galarian Weezing. We can throw this move, and we even have energy on Sableye in the backline. We outpace them before they can get to back-to-back Hydro Cannons, and we can knock out the Blastoise without needing all that energy on our Sableye in the back. Sludge comes through, knocks out the Blastoise, GG's to them. All right, next game here, we're going to see the Lapras in the lead. A bit of an awkward matchup because Psywave is super effective, but because these are non-stab Psywaves, you can tell that these Sludges are going to add up quite a bit over time, and we can just swap out and make it so the charge moves are going to be soaked on our Lapras here after the fact. Because Lapras is going to be able to take a Skull Bash pretty easily, we're going to be able to win this mirror matchup if they do end up staying in. Let's see what move they're going to throw. They do end up throwing a Sparkling Aria, actually, meaning they likely have Ice Beam as their second move, and then they come in with a Mandibuzz, which, I mean, if I had Ice Beam, this would be a decent matchup. Because I don't, though, this is going to be kind of awkward. Psywave is resisted, and these Dark Pulses are going to be able to two-shot us here at this point. Mandibuzz is such an interesting pick in this meta. If this main Ice-type Pokemon in the entire meta is Lapras, with resisted Sideways, and they are not running Ice Beam, honestly, it's not exactly the worst matchup against a lot of these Pokemon. So, very interesting Pokemon. I want to get my Weezing on this, though, if I can. We saw it in the Switch Clock with yet another Sparkling Aria. We get a shield because our opponent did think that I might have Ice Beam, which is good for us, but now I can come back in with our Weezing, go for Sludges and Fairy Winds against this Pokemon, and hopefully just build up energy in case that Lapras does come back in. Lapras is going to come in right on cue, which means Sludge is going to be thrown. Our opponent might shield this up, but because we have so much energy, we might even be able to reach another one before getting Psywave down. They try to farm us down, but because we are able to reach this charge move, all of their energy might just get sniped down with this Sludge. Sludge is a very efficient move. It is able to knock them out, and now we are in a very good spot. Our opponent reveals her final Pokemon. It's a Clodsire, so I'm kind of surprised actually they didn't bring in Clodsire a little bit earlier this game. If they would have brought it in the second time that I brought back in Weezing, this could be a little bit better for them, but now we're able to go for Brutal Swing, come back in with our Lapras, go for Sparkling Aria against this, and hopefully use our Shadow Sableye to finish off the Mandibuzz later on. In comes a charge move, likely going to be a Sludge Bomb. I do have to shield it up at this point. I feel like Lapras is a little bit too important to let go. Our opponent, though, making a fantastic catch on this Mandibuzz, making it so this energy is going to go down the drain. With that said, Shadow Sableye is still in a very good spot to win this endgame. All I have to do is land a Foul Play, Shadow Claw the rest of the way down, and then Shadow Claw, Foul Play, and Sparkling Aria and Psywave against that Clodsire should be enough to win this endgame, because Clodsire is a little bit awkward against both of my remaining Pokemon. In comes a Foul Play. Isn't enough from this range. It did get that damage decrease, so I think they might survive just barely, but 2 Shadow Claws enough to knock out Mandibuzz, and in comes Clodsire. They don't want to take these Shadow Claws, they don't want to take the Foul Plays, and if my Sableye does end up going down, then our Psywaves and Sparkling Arias should be enough to win this game. Foul Play does almost half of the remaining health at this point, so if I reach another one, we might be able to win this game. I'm going to no-shield this. If it is an Earthquake, it knocks us out. If it's a Sludge Bomb, I don't want to shield a bait. Thankfully for us, it is a bait, which means now we can reach this Foul Play and finish the game off with our Shadow Sableye. Foul Play comes through, it's going to knock out this Clodsire. GG's to our opponent. All right, let's see what we have here in the next game. Weezing in the lead up against a Shadow, or a non-Shadow Sableye, which likely does have Shadow Claw, maybe Foul Play. Well, I mean, definitely Foul Play, but maybe Dazzling Gleam, maybe Power Gem. That's going to be the big question. They actually don't even bait the Power Gem, so I'm going to no-shield this Foul Play instantly and just go for a straight Brutal Swing against this Pokemon. I know these Fairy Winds are adding up. Our opponent is staying in this matchup, likely meaning that we have a lot of play with our Weezing in the back. Brutal Swing going to be thrown. Do they shield this up? They do. They respect that it could be an Overheat or potentially a Play Rough. And comes yet another Brutal Swing. Do they shield up a second time? I'd be kind of surprised at this point if they do. And, well, actually they do, which is kind of interesting to us here. And they make a nice catch, but on a Deoxys defense, which is still going to take super effective damage from this Brutal Swing. They do also switch lock themselves into our Shadow Sableye by doing this play, which means we can just shield once, farm all the way down, have a ton of energy on our Shadow Sableye to either throw against their own Sableye or against whatever the final Pokemon is going to be. Psycho Boost is going to bait our shield, I guess, but they're not even going to reach a second Psycho Boost, so very interesting play by them here, and because of their energy nerf on counter a while back, they don't even reach a second charge move. Foul Play and Power Gem are very efficient charge moves. Power Gem against Azumarill is what I want to throw. If I ever see that Sableye come back in, I'd want to throw Foul Play against them. Power Gem number 2 going to be thrown. This Azumarill has not even reached a charge move yet. Foul Play is going to be loaded in just a second for that potential Sableye in the backline. We're going to save it, try to catch a move on our Lapras, which you don't quite do, but because I know at this point that our Lapras is at full HP, even if they do have Power Gem, we can no-shield, and that's just a Foul Play. We survive that very easily through a Sparkling Aria to finish off this Sableye, and then we can Psywave, Sparkling Aria, Foul Play, you know, anything that we can do damage with against this Azumarill should be enough to knock them out. I guess at this point, there's some Psywave downrange. We can no-shield this. Play Rough going to do a pitiful amount of damage, and then Azumarill is going to go down to our Lapras there. All right, next game, we're going to see our Shadow Galarian Weezing up against a Clodsire Pokemon, which is very bad for our Weezing here, but our backline does have a lot of play into this. We resist Poison Sting with our Shadow Sableye. We have a lot of damage with Shadow Claw, as well as Foul Play, and then if we can get our Lapras against this Pokemon later on, Psywave and Sparkling Aria are going to do a massive amount of damage to them. In comes a charge move from them in just a second. They did build up a ton of energy. This could be Earthquake, but I know I do survive it. I don't get one-shot by it, so I'm going to no-shield and see what they're going to do. They actually go for the chip and dip by going into their own Sableye now. This is going to be a Shadow Foul Play into a Shadow Sableye. It's going to be a massive amount of damage and put them into a nice Fairy Wind downrange for our Galarian Weezing. At this point, though, they might actually have access to Power Gem. They did build up enough energy that they could throw it, so I will respect that move. If it was a Power Gem, it would likely nearly one-shot us because it's Shadow into Shadow, and Power Gem is such a strong move, but they just go for a Foul Play, so honestly, a bit of a wasted shield by us, but still, I think it was the right call. I can come in with our Lapras here and do a lot of Psywaves against them. If they can't swap out yet because the switch clocks are desynced, we can put them into a range where even Brutal Swing later on this game could be enough to knock them out. In comes a Sludge Bomb, luckily not going to be a Stone Edge here, and we see their final Pokemon is a Golisopod. We have access to Skull Bash, which is obviously a very efficient charge move. It will also raise our defense stat, which makes it so that I don't think one charge move from Golisopod knocks us out at this point, so we can go for a Sparkling Aria on CMP right when they get to back-to-back charge moves, and now this Golisopod is in such a bad spot. They no-shielded the wrong move, and at this point, they're going to have to shield a Sparkling Aria if they want to get their second charge attack off. If they do shield, they're in a bad spot. If they don't shield, they're in a bad spot. They do shield, and then we can Psywave down. Our our Galarian Weezing at this point is going to be more than enough to spam out these Brutal Swings and close out this endgame. Weezing, despite not having Stab Brutal Swing, is a very offensive Pokemon. It should be able to knock them out, or at least put them into a Fairy Wind down range after the fact. In comes another Brutal Swing. Our opponent is going to have no choice but to take this move. Brutal Swing not enough to knock out, but Fairy Winds are going to chunk them down slowly over time, and by the time I get to the next move, I basically will have knocked them out with Fast Food Pressure. We can farm them all the way down, and Galarian Weezing beating one of its worst possible matchups. All right, next matchup here. What are we going to see? Shadow Weezing up against a Primeape. One of the best leads we could possibly see in this meta. They could Rage Fist and boost against us, but because we are resisting all of their damage, let me get back to you on that Primeape matchup in just a second. They just swapped in a Wigglytuff into our Shadow Galarian Weezing, which is arguably worse for them. Honestly, I have no idea which matchup's worse because Primeape is not a good matchup. Wigglytuff is probably even worse just because I one-shot with these Sludge Bombs. I can just spam out these Sludge Bombs against them. I don't know. This is looking very good for a Weezing right now, though, because we can shield up this Ice Wind, get to back-to-back Sludges, and I think even after a debuff, we can still knock them out with a single charge move. In comes a Sludge here. In just a second, our opponent is not able to reach a Swift before we can reach a third and a fourth Sludge. If this is enough to knock out, I'm very happy, and despite the debuff, it is enough to KO the Wigglytuff. Who do they bring in now? What is their team? What's their final Pokemon going to be? Hopefully it's going to be a Weezing answer for their sake, and I guess it is, unfortunately. I can't get a full Weezing sweep, but what we can do is go and get a CMP on the Sparkling Aria. They can Brave for me all they want. If they do end up throwing that move, then Weezing can just come back in and have a field day. If they don't throw that, then I can just survive, easily go for a Sparkling Aria, and it was just a Flame Charge, meaning that is a lot of energy down the drain, saying they are not going to be able to get to a second charge move. In comes that Primeape, and at this point, I see a way that we can actually sweep with our Weezing. I just have to let our Lapras go, come back in with Weezing, and start spamming out charge moves. Rage Fist will ramp up their attack stat, but because we are a Fairy and Poison type Pokemon, we can resist these fighting capacitors quite a bit. Sludge is going to come through, likely knocking out this Primeape, and then we can reach another charge move against this Talonflame, getting a full-on Shadow Galarian sweep without even, Shadow Galarian Weezing sweep, that is, without even needing a Shadow Sableye. GG's to our opponent. Very interesting team. All right, next matchup, Shadow Weezing up against the Shadow Drapion. This matchup is actually pretty neutral. We know that Shadow Drapion is a Pokemon that has access to resisting our Dark and Poison type charge moves, but our Fairy Winds are adding up over time, and if you win CMP with your Galarian Weezing in the 2-shield matchup, you win straight Brutal Swing because you pace evenly to these Aqua Tails. You don't get one-shot by an Aqua Tail, still non-stab from them, and this matchup, it's not quite as bad as you might expect. They actually do end up shielding that first charge move. I baited, at least it could have been an Overheat or a Play Rough, so a good thing to get a shield early on. I go for another Brutal Swing, and at this point, I have to shield up if I want to get yet another charge move off against them. If they want to knock us out, they have to throw another Aqua Tail here, and because I know we might win CMP, I'm going to throw it, and thanks to our opponent CMPing us here, this matchup, which could have been tricky for our entire team, is now actually going to set us up for a nice Shadow Claw or Psywave down in the backline. I can just no-shield this. Weezing has done its job. I am a little bit sad that we've wasted our Weezing here. There's a chance Weezing could have marked a better matchup in the backline, like against an Azumarill, and if that is the case, it's a little bit sad here, but our opponent is taking a second to see what they want to bring in. What is it going to be? It's going to be a Water type, not the Azumarill, but actually a Blastoise of Pokemon, which, while it is kind of bulky, I know that Foul Play and Shadow Claw will add up over time, and because we can outpace them here, we can make it very awkward for them, where maybe we can even catch a move after throwing 2 Foul Plays. Let's see if they want to throw a good timing or not. They are overfarming a ton of energy. Rollout is a very quick energy generation move, but thanks to the rollout nerf, the damage is not adding up quite as quickly. We catch a move, hopefully it's going to be a Hydro Cannon, not a Skull Bash. It'd be crazy if it was a Skull Bash. Luckily, Hydro Cannon does get thrown. Our opponent is in range where Sideways, Shadow Claws, basically all that good stuff will be enough to knock them out, and in comes a Shadow Sableye. This Pokemon does go straight for a Foul Play. I can no-shield this. I know that's not a Power Gem, and then I can go for 2 Sparkling Arias and use our own Shadow Sableye to close out this endgame. First Sparkling Aria is going to come through. Shadow Sableye is a very squishy Pokemon, but because Psywave is not the most offensive move, I likely will have to throw a second charge move to knock this Pokemon out. In comes our next charge attack here. Our opponent has no shields remaining. It is going to end up landing. In comes our own Shadow Sableye. Shadow Claws are adding up quite a bit, but they do have a lot of energy here, so they might actually be able to land a second Hydro Cannon against us, and if they can, that's going to make our life a little bit uncomfortable. Do we survive this move? If we do, then we're in a great spot. If not, then I think we might even be able to Psywave down. Hydro Cannon comes through, but Sableye just a bit too bulky. It survives that, and we're able to win the game. Next matchup, Shadow Weezing up against an Annihilate in the lead. Fantastic lead matchup here. Let's see what our opponent is going to do. Do they stay in? Do they swap out? They do end up swapping out. I see a Poison-type Pokemon. I honestly had no idea what a mono Poison-type Pokemon would be. It could be a Grimer, it could be a Muck, could be a Swalot, it could be a lot of different things, so I didn't know exactly what to respond to, so I just go for a Brutal Swing and Chip into my Shadow Sableye. At this point, I know after that chip damage, I can shield once, farm all the way down, and have basically 100 energy for the backline. There's not a lot in the game that wants to take a ton of Power Gems or Foul Plays, so this energy lead on my Sableye should be good, and I know at this point they're not going to reach a third charge move on Muck. Poison Jab is not the most efficient fast move, and because we resist the fast move pressure, we're able to farm down pretty easily and have a ton of energy for whatever is going to come in. Our opponent does actually bring back in the Annihilate here. This could be a Dazzling Gleam. They might have to respect this move, actually. Foul Play is going to be thrown, and they do shield it up. Foul Play is going to be thrown once again. Shadow Claw as well is going to be adding up against them, but they make a nice catch on their B-Barrel. With that said, I'm kind of happy to throw this move. I don't have a great answer to B-Barrel on my whole team, so these Foul Plays, especially Shadow into Shadow, basically doing 75% of this Pokemon's health. That's kind of crazy. Saying Foul Play actually got its damage decreased this season, so I get both of the shields here from this B-Barrel. I get a ton of damage against them, and now I can go for a Sidewave down, or maybe throw a Sparkling Aria if we have to. I know that these rollouts are not going to be able to knock us out here with Fast Food Pressure before I can go for a Sidewave down, so just commit to the Fast Food Pressure, and maybe I can just knock out the Fighting type Pokemon with our Lapras. Let's see if we can do it. In comes the first Sparkling Aria. The second one is very closely going to be followed soon after. In comes the first charge move. Is it enough to two-shot? Easily. Annihilate is a very squishy Pokemon. Lapras is so bulky. We can survive these counters and reach its next charge move. Sparkling Aria should be enough here to close out the game and get us the win in this match. GG's to our opponent. That was a very interesting team, once again showcasing just how powerful these newly buffed Pokemon can be. Shadow Sableye putting in a ton of work with all of that energy. Having actual pacing on Sableye is amazing. Having that good, efficient coverage move on our Galarian Weezing with Sludge is also just such a solid core breaker, and I think Lapras, everyone knew it was going to be good, but it is just such a fun Pokemon to use. So definitely, if you want to give a team like this a try, these three Pokemon are fantastic. I would definitely recommend it. All right, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more videos like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again, though, for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.